All right, so breaking news at this hour. The New York Times is reporting that a Manhattan grand jury has voted to indict former President Donald Trump. It is for his role in paying hush money to porn star Stormy Daniels. We don't know the charges per se, but joining us on the phone right now is former U.S. Attorney Patrick Collins. He is the first former or current president, obviously, Pat, to be indicted. We welcome you in. What are your initial thoughts?
Well, it's pretty extraordinary, again, and we don't know the specifics. It is an indictment that Trump himself has sort of presaged and suggested he would be arrested. And while we heard that the grand jury wasn't going to be meeting for a while, apparently they voted. We do have to wait for the details, but it's an extraordinary indictment, a former president being charged, and there's all sort of political ramifications, both for the former president, but also, for the person who's brought the charge, which is a, elected state's attorney in New York. So there's all sorts of political issues here to sort through. But the charge itself is, again, as we've been told, is a pretty straightforward sense that the former president paid $130,000 disguised as a legal fee to pay essentially hush money to this porn star, Stormy Daniels, to protect his run for the presidency years ago.
Okay, Patrick Collins, let's stay with that, because I think for a lot of people it becomes very confusing when they've got all these moving pieces to the cases against Trump. And I think they ask themselves, what is this about? Is this a tax evasion charge? Sort of explain where this is coming from, because for a lot of folks, they might think this is a misdemeanor, right? So explain the logistics of how this works.
Yeah, Lourdes, and again, we haven't seen the actual charge, so I'd be reluctant to sort of state it with specificity. But as we've been told, it's basically a charge where a payment was misdirected or called something it wasn't. In other words, there was a hush money payment that was disguised as a legal expense, with the star witness being Michael Cohen, who's Trump's former attorney, who's now turned into a government witness. And again, we do have to wait. I do want to caution the audience to wait to see what there actually is charged. But Lourdes, I do have to say, again, as someone who's in the criminal justice system, how many times would this charge be made if it wasn't, Donald Trump? That's a fair question. But we do have to wait and see what it is. But it's really, at least as it's been described so far, it's at its core a payment, $130,000, that was falsely described as a legal expense that was really a payment to silence Stormy Daniels.
All right, Pat, so walk us through, the coming days, assuming for the moment that this is true. So Mr. Trump's attorneys will obviously be given knowledge of this. And then he has to surrender? How does that work? Do they work out a deal on how to proceed in terms of him, turning himself over? Does he get arrested? Is it mugshots? How does that work?
Yeah, it's a fair question, Patrick. And again, I think Donald Trump, what was it, 2 weeks ago, who said, I'm going to be arrested on Tuesday. I do think he was sort of, presenting a scenario in which he would be arrested and effectively be made a victim. I think what's happening now is Donald Trump's lawyers, if in fact this charge has occurred, they're negotiating whether there's a self-surrender or whether there's an arrest and effectively what they call a perp walk, which, again, depending on the politics of this, would either be a benefit to Donald Trump or, a negative, in the sense that he would be declared someone put in handcuffs and walk through a gauntlet through the system. And again, I suspect what's happening now, if this charge has happened, Donald Trump's lawyers are negotiating a surrender, which would be the quiet way to do this. If Donald Trump feels it's in his advantage to make an example of this, then perhaps they would go through the handcuffs and the public arrest, if you will.
All right. We've also reported on the Mar-a-Lago documents case. It's, I say that there's so many moving parts to Donald Trump, right? And I wonder how this case would affect some of the other moving pieces in the Donald Trump world. So meaning the Mar-a-Lago documents case, would this have any impact on that?
It's a fair question, Lourdes, but I have to say it's important for your viewers to understand these are two separate entities that are doing the investigation. The investigation that resulted in the indictment, as we're learning, it's the District Attorney Bragg, who's a state elected New York Manhattan District Attorney. The U.S. Attorney's Office and the Department of Justice are doing the Mar-a-Lago documents case. And I think by definition, that's a longer term, more methodical case. But it's two different agencies of the government who I suspect, Lourdes, and I don't know this, but I suspect are not coordinating. It's two different fact patterns. The Stormy Daniels matter has absolutely nothing to do with the Mar-a-Lago documents case.
All right, so Patrick Collins, stay with us. Former federal prosecutor, was instrumental in the prosecution of former Illinois Governor George Ryan. Let's do a reset for those who are just joining us now. Breaking news out of New York. The New York Times is reporting that a Manhattan grand jury has voted to indict former President Donald Trump. It is for his role in paying hush money to porn star Stormy Daniels. We don't know the charges again, but we are running through possible scenarios in terms of his surrender and how this case is going to be handled moving forward. So having said all of that, Pat, politically speaking, what is your number here from 1 to 10 that this actually happened?
Well, I mean, it sounds like it's very likely to have happened, Pat. So, I mean, we're talking probably in the 8 to 10 range. Donald Trump himself, talked about it in the last week or so, and I think he was trying to get out ahead of it. The reality is what are the likely chances this will stick? He could be convicted. To me, that's a very different equation. And I have to say, as someone who's been in the criminal justice system, and I don't have any particular political persuasion, I think a fair question to be asked is whether this case would be charged for anyone other than Donald Trump. And in some respects, he's taunted the system to charge him. And if the system has gone forward and charged him, I think Donald Trump has calculated that he's going to, benefit from this sort of victimization by the politicalization of the process. And we'll have to see how that plays out. Right. I do think the more serious, matter is as Lourdes said earlier, the DOJ case, and we don't know where that's headed, but I don't suspect there's any conclusion there very soon.
All right, Patrick Collins, stay with us on the phone. Obviously, we're trying to unpack all of this as this information's coming in this afternoon. We do have Stephen Caliento on the phone with us as well. He's with North Central College, and he could probably weigh in a little bit more on the political ramifications of all of this. Hello to you. Do you hear us? Stephen, are you there? This is Lourdes and Patrick.
I can hear you both.
Okay.
Can you hear me?
Yes,
okay.
We can hear you. Let's just get your initial thoughts on all of this as this news comes in this afternoon, the New York Times and CNN reporting it.
Yeah, it's been a little bit of a roller coaster, right? I mean, the former president kind of indicated that he thought last Tuesday was going to be the day, and then it didn't happen. And then we got a report just a couple of days ago that the grand jury was going to take a break, and it was going to be after April 5th. And so a little bit of a surprise that we're getting it this afternoon. But I think your last guest, Patrick, was right on point in terms of the expectation about how the Trump team will deal with this.
Professor, let's talk about the politics of the whole matter. The former president signaled, a week or so ago that he said this was coming. He had asked his supporters to come and protest there in Manhattan. If you are advising him, well, I don't know how you want to put this politically speaking, he's going to use this to his advantage in some way or another. What are your thoughts on that?
Absolutely correct. And I don't know what's going to be most helpful. I mean, I think there's a couple ways this can play out politically. One is, as Patrick sort of suggested a moment ago, the political martyr. And I think we've seen indications of that from Trump supporters over the last few weeks. Suggestions like if it can happen to him, it can happen to any of us. And this is very consistent with what former President Trump's message has been. His sort of neo-populist message is that what they do to me, they're trying to do to you. And so when he's persecuted, it's a persecution of the every person or the ordinary American, which is a little odd considering the specific charges that are being leveled here. This is not something that every American is typically involved in. But he could use that. The other way is to be quiet. And to not make a spectacle of the processing, and then to fight the case, because again, as Patrick suggested very wisely, I think whether these charges would stick and that he'd be convicted is very different than whether an indictment can be handed
Let
down.
me ask you this, though. Correct me if I'm wrong. A convicted felon cannot hold the office of president. Is that right?
That's not correct.
That is
No.
not correct. Thank you.
No, it's not correct. In fact, this Constitution has very little to say about qualifications for President of the United States. I mean, this hasn't come up because I think a lot of folks assume that voters were not going to be particularly enthusiastic. But even members of Congress, when convicted of a crime, can serve. Now, a lot of states have laws, and this is, I think, what you're thinking. A lot of states have laws that forbid convicted felons of running for state office. But the federal office rules are different. They're governed by the Constitution, and we don't have clear guidance in most cases. And where we do have guidance, the guidance allows that a convicted felon can, in fact, run and serve.
Interesting.
Okay, let's continue on this theme of running for political office, if that's in fact the case, and what we may see in the coming year. What does it mean for his run for political office? And you obviously touched on this a little bit. Does he sort of talk about this over and over again as he's out on the campaign trail? What do you think that will be like?
There's no way to ignore this. He will be talking about it, and he will spin it to his advantage. The question will be if he chooses the first route that I described and allows himself to be videoed in handcuffs and videotape the fingerprinting, et cetera, that can be used for fundraising. And it probably will be used very effectively for fundraising. The real question is, remember that before we get to any election against a Democratic candidate, there's going to be other Republicans that are running for the nomination in less than a year in Iowa and New Hampshire and South Carolina, for instance. And so those elections are coming up quickly. What I'll be interested to see if any of those opponents, some of whom we know, some of whom we suspect but haven't made it official yet, what are those folks going to say about it? Are they going to say, look, this is a way to separate myself from the former president? Or are they going to have to support him for fear that the folks who believe that he's a political prisoner, for instance, will come backfire on them if they don't rally behind him? So that'll be interesting to hear. What the Nikki Haley's, DeSantis, the Mike Pence's, they're all going to be asked about this in the next couple of days. How they answer is going to be very important.
No doubt about that. Professor Caliendo, stay with us. Patrick Collins, are you still there?
I am.
Okay, so you're in private practice now. If you were advising Mr. Trump, would you advise him not to say anything about this because those words could be used against him in a court of law?
I mean, I'm only chuckling, Patrick, because, Donald Trump wouldn't. I think
he would never abide by that.
I saw his lawyer on Meet the Press this weekend basically saying, he does advise the former president on, his social media policy. I think the bottom line, Patrick, is that Donald Trump is going to use this development, and he's going to make, lemonade out of lemons, if you will, and he's going to attempt to use this to show that he's been persecuted by a corrupt Democratic, system. And, whether that plays with the general population or not, again, that's not my world. But I do think 100%, whatever the legal advice of an attorney, he's going to play the game the way he's always played the game. I think a conservative lawyer would typically say, you don't fight the charges in public and you wait in the courtroom. But that's not how Donald Trump plays the game. And I think he's going to attempt to use this for fundraising, to show that the system is corrupt, to show that it's political. And, again, as a practitioner in the system, I just worry the repercussions of this for the average process where people, conclude that it is political, which to me is not a good thing for our criminal justice system. It shouldn't be. It can't be political. I don't express an opinion on this because I don't know the facts, and I don't know whether an indictment, in fact, has been brought. But I do think Donald Trump will use this to attempt to advance his political agenda. There's just no doubt about that.
We are going to be learning more, hopefully, here in the coming hours and certainly in the coming days. But again, we're still waiting to see what that indictment looks like and what the charges look like from New York. Thank you so much to Patrick Collins and Stephen Caliendo for weighing in on all of this.